Hello, and welcome to the WWIA Podcast. We're honored to have you join us in our mission to bring honor, connection, and healing to America's combat wounded Purple Heart heroes. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, we welcome you. If you're a returning listener, thanks for coming back. Please be sure to tell others about our podcast and leave us a review if you're enjoying what you're hearing. On today's episode of the WWIA Podcast, WWIA Founder and CEO John McDaniel spends some time talking with two incredible American patriots, Dennis Reynolds and Shelley Cohen. Dennis and Shelley have been tremendous supporters of the foundation, hosting 3 different WWIA events annually at their beautiful DoubleCreek Lodge in Tennessee. They currently host a turkey hunt in the spring, followed by an archery deer hunt and rifle deer hunt in the fall. This year will mark a decade of Dennis and Shelley proudly serving and honoring our Purple Heart heroes, and we couldn't be more grateful for their outstanding efforts and dedication. We hope you enjoy getting to know Dennis and Shelley, and we appreciate them taking time out to share some of their stories and experiences with us. Without further ado, let's join John, Dennis, and Shelley now.
Hi, I'm John McDaniel, founder and CEO of the Wounded Warriors in Action Foundation, and this is our podcast, Honor, Connect, and Heal. Today, I have with me the privilege of having with me 2 of some of my favorite Americans, all right, and they are what I would refer to as super hosts. And so we'll get into what a super host is, but with me I have Dennis and Shelley, and you both hail from a wonderful place called Hohenwald, Tennessee. So Dennis Reynolds and Shelley Cohen, welcome to the program, and how are you?
Thanks for having us, John. We're great. Glad to be here.
Thank you, John.
Yes. Well, for those that are listening, I can see their bright, shiny faces, but you can't. So I have that luxury. But I think mostly, I feel very blessed on behalf of the foundation, to have you in our lives, and you've been very faithful and very wonderful and accomplished hosts, because in 10 years, you started in 2013, it's 2023, and in 10 years, you've hosted a total of 24 events. Can you believe that?
Incredible. Incredible to think of that.
It is. And so if you did the quick, fuzzy math and just said, okay, there, on average, there's, 4 to 5 heroes on your event, you've touched over 100 lives personally in that. And combat wounded Purple Heart recipients, you've touched at least 100 of them in their lives. And that's got to feel, I would think that feels pretty good.
Well, it does, but more importantly, they've touched our lives back over tenfold.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say, Dennis?
Oh, yeah.
For everyone that we may have touched, they've touched both of us back, and all the volunteers that help support each and every event have been touched by this.
Yeah. It's we used to refer to it as the magic, and it's just a very broad term for describing something that's really good and hard to, like magic, hard to really understand, what's happening. And there's a lot of layers, and I want to get into those layers, of what makes this a special thing, not just for the heroes, but for the hosts. And today, this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight on you two and your wonderful community and what you do. You hail your place. You call it, Hunts for Purple Heart recipients there in Hohenwald, Tennessee, which is southwest of Nashville. But that's your place. You have a beautiful place up there. For 10 years, we've been delivering combat wounded Purple Heart recipients to your beautiful facility there. So if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about that amazing property. I've been on it. I was blown away. Literally, I was like, wow. I mean, just the drive up to your place. And for those that don't know, you probably know this, but Hohenwald is German for high forest, And so you guys are in a high forest. And so tell us about your property.
Well, we truly are immersed in the middle of the woods, as Dennis will tell people. We live in a log home on about 106 acres, surrounded by hundreds of acres of land that is owned by different paper companies. It's basically forestry that's out there. So it's very serene. And the back of the property runs two creeks that come together at a point. And that's how Dennis came up with the name of the property, DoubleCreek.
DoubleCreek.
Right.
Yes, I see that on all the things, all the thank yous and things that I sign, and of course our our operations orders that we issue in support of your activities all say DoubleCreek. So yeah, that's a word that certainly resonates with me. So I didn't know that's where that came from. But you can sit on your porch and look down as the terrain slopes down towards a creek, which I think depending on the on the conditions that thing it can be anything from a small creek to a raging torrent, right? Sort of. You've had both, yes.
We have one very memorable picture that I happen to catch off the porch. One of the heroes sitting on a rock facing the creek at the very top of that hill, John. And just sitting there for, I don't know, maybe an hour or longer contemplating. And since that time, we've put a permanent bench there because we didn't realize how much that had become a place of reflection for a lot of the heroes. We'll spot them once they're comfortable in the surroundings. We'll spot them off and on just sitting out there by themselves, sometimes one or two of them together, just sitting there reflecting for quite a period of time. So I think that view that you described, of the creek became more important than we realized it was going to be for the heroes that come. Wouldn't you say, Dennis?
Oh, yeah. And you never know what you're going to see for wildlife there. Well, we've seen about everything. We've had things on our property that the state says don't exist in Tennessee, like a panther. I've seen two.
Wow.
And like yesterday, Shelley took a picture of, she thought it was two turkeys, but it was two turkey buzzards out back. And she said, are our cats in danger? And I said, no, I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But, the preface to the property that you described, John, remember, is a mile-long driveway. And
yes.
It's interesting when Dennis picks the heroes up at the airport and they're driving on their own, coming down that mile-long driveway, it kind of sets the stage for the mental space that they're about to go into. That's going to be part of the events, the hunts. And so we hear from them, Dennis does it, especially when he's coming down the drive with everybody in the car or the truck, that they just are already immersed in this solitary environment. And I think that's part of the conduciveness to healing, is that they begin the journey coming through this isolation that kind of takes everything else away from their outside world, is kind of off to the side. Well, especially because they don't have cell phone service coming down the drive. But that all sets the stage, for that property to talk about.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a couple of things that are really important. The creek or the river, the waterway. That's a really important piece to the property, to all property, because water is life, right? I mean, we can't have life without water. So that's metaphorically an important piece. And the fact that it's always moving, and some things in a river sometimes will get a little hung up. But also with that, over time, whatever's hung up, say it's a leaf, gets hung up as it's journeying down this creek, even that eventually will pass, And so I think water and rivers in particular and creeks are super important, especially the sound that they make, right? To be there and listen. Like often you can put on a bubbling brook or something if you might have trouble going to sleep, but just the tranquility and the sound of running water, is super important. And also this idea of stillness in nature, even though it's not static. It's always in flux and it's always moving, but there seems to be this really important, especially, at your place, at your lodge, your home. There's a certain stillness that goes along with it. You're looking at each other. Did I say something funny or what?
No, we were talking about stillness, and underneath our legs, we're in a conference center helping you do the podcast. Somebody's dog got loose.
A little teeny white dog coming between my legs.
Perfect. So, we have a third guest.
There you go. So truly, nature is not static.
That's right. It never has. No, and it never has been. It never will be. But there's really, it's the centerpiece to what we do. I always used to refer to it as the attractor, and so to pull the green curtain back a little bit, I did a lot of theory, research and study in chaos theory. This is not the topic of the podcast, but I did it, and I was fascinated by this theory of chaos, and but this idea of the dynamic nature of chaos, and out of chaos coming some bits or pieces that you can gravitate towards that end up yielding meaning in a space that's really chaotic and dynamic. And the funny or interesting thing about our space is a lot of these, men and women, come to us in a state of internal chaos. And, hopefully, time heals all wounds. But as we get further away from the point where they were wounded and their the things that they had to witness and participate in, the horrific things often that they had to go through in combat, going to a place where that chaos, okay? But that chaos stays with you, traumatic. You're a healer, Shelley. We'll get to that in a minute, in your professional life. But you're also a healer, in your volunteer life and in this important space with these combat wounded veterans. But to go from a place of chaos to, stillness and healing, in an environment that they're not maybe not wholly comfortable with, because there's a little bit of anxiety associated with going there, wherever there is. We have 50 events, 35 different states, et cetera. But, there's some anxiety associated with uncertainty, right? And so this idea of, hey, I'm getting on a plane, right? I'm coming from my hometown. I've got all this chaos in my life and in my past. And then I'm going to get on a plane and go someplace and meet some people that I don't know who are going to open their home. And that alone, the uncertainty of that alone, can be a little daunting. But then that drive up to your, that mile drive up into the high forest in Hohenwald to find your homestead in this beautiful place, I think probably as soon as they open that door and get out, it's got to hit them. Right? It's got to hit them that, this is a safe place. This is a place where there's stillness. This is a place where healing can be found. And to meet you two wonderful people, it's just great. What you're doing is just awesome. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you guys are doing. But I want to hear, and we want to hear from you. Like, what is this doing for you? When this is all said and done and they leave and you had a chance to process, you've had 24 events. That's crazy to me that in 10 years, you've done 24 events. But what's happening inside of you two after everybody leaves and you've had a chance to reflect on what you've done?
Well, it's a really good question. And I'd have to start with one of the dogs we've had for a long time. Her name was Ginger. And she died about 2 years ago. She was a big part of the event. And when the heroes would leave, she would sit by the window waiting for them to come back for a good part of the day. I mean, she was so remorseful, just so sad when they would leave, because it was so easy to form a bond with them and back to her. But then I would be tearing up when they would leave, because it's amazing how quickly you can have a superficial friendship, but when you're connecting with people like you talked about, the chaos, that have gone through so much turmoil, that are continuing to endure so many medical and mental health issues from injuries that happened maybe 10 plus years ago, it's a whole nother level of a friendship. And it's amazing how quickly you can feel a true friendship bondage in just a weekend. It's absolutely amazing that you can do that. So when the guys and the gals are heading out, I'm back at the house tearful. Dennis is taking them back to the airport, and he'll call me when he's done a safe delivery of trying to get everybody home. And he'll call me, and we're just like back and forth on the phone going, remember this one and remember that one. And oh man, I wish, should we have them come back again? So what do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I was shocked when you said we've had 24 events, but I can honestly tell you we've had 24 perfect events. We've never had a bad event. We've never had a bad experience. But I remember particularly one young man who came out of Clarksville. He drove Clarksville, Tennessee, and he drove to our location. It was about a 3-hour drive. And when he got to the house, he got out of the truck and he was walking down, and he was, he was suffering from what he had experienced in the military, and he hadn't been able to deal with it. And for hours, he would just sit with his arms crossed and his head down. And a few hours later, another young man showed up, and the two of them started talking. And it was amazing. If you saw that young man on day one and you saw him on day 3, you'd say, that's not the same guy. Those two guys bonded and were able to take and help each other out because they understood what each other had gone through, where the guy that I had first met didn't have anybody to talk to, didn't have anybody to unload on, didn't have anybody that understood how he was hurting. And this young man did. And what was amazing, John, was they both came from Clarksville, and they didn't know each other. And when they left, they were best friends, and I'll bet you they're still best friends, and they connected and they communicate with each other today, I bet.
I'll bet. So when you say Clarksville, I assume that they both came out of the 101st Airborne.
Yeah, down at Fort Campbell area.
Campbell, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, great. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because they probably, both had in common the fact that they were at the, with the 101st, and their combat deployments were probably, similar. Well, that's great. Yeah. So honor, connect, and heal. And the connect piece is really important because there's a lot of, I usually got, connective tissue, right? If you look at the human body as an organization, like just think about how much connective tissue there is there, right? I mean, and you're in the medical field. I mean, you couldn't probably measure that, right?
Right.
But this idea of the foundation and this connective tissue, one of the huge touch points, if you will, or the connections that's ultimately, perseveres here in this space is the connections between the combat wounded, because they share in common similar experiences, similar challenges, and that's just not in life, but in their combat activities and in their recovery. So that's really important because, if you have those kinds of experiences, which they all do in varying degrees, hey, they have got an opportunity on these events to connect with 3 or 4 others who have similar challenges. And that's really important. It's super important because hey, I'm not a combat wounded guy. Been there, done that, but I, thank God, didn't get wounded. So it's something that I see, okay, and I'm very much aware of. That important connection, and obviously, have seen it for 17, years now in this space. And I hold it sacred. I genuinely do. Getting them together amongst a council of their peers in a safe environment is huge. So it takes a little while. If you look at groups, and this idea of storming, norming, forming, et cetera, that if you put that on a bell-shaped curve or a timeline, you would see, I think, in this space that what's happening in the norming phase, and all that leads up to this, normalcy, an equilibrium among the groups, that happens very rapidly in our space, typically, generally, normally, usually, because of all the things that they share in common. They can go, right to a space and begin to form meaningful bonds and share, stories and connect on that very intimate level. So that's a phenomenon, if you ask me, that's really important to this space. But superimposed on top of that, this other really important layer, and there's a bunch of them, is this idea of people like you that they don't know, that are opening their homes to honor what they did. Like, think how powerful that is. And compare that to what was happening 30 and 40 years ago, after Vietnam. Right? So it's so different today. And for you to do that sends a psychological message, in my opinion. Okay. It might not even register with them like cognitively, but I think on some level it's got to, that these are people in America, in the America that I went to war for, that are welcoming me home in a way that's important to them, that honors and respects what I did. And it validates, I think, why they raised their right hand, put on a uniform, and went someplace to go to war. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
absolutely. 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 And, we, at the end of the conclusion of every event, one of the common things we hear for feedback from the heroes as they're packing up and getting ready to go back home is they'll say, I can't believe you opened up your home. I feel like family. And when we look at the written testimonials from a lot of the participants, that's a common thread and a common theme that we see too, that, I felt like your family. And that's truly what we want. We want them to know how much, is appreciated. A lot of people say, well, what can we do to thank, our veterans or people who are serving? And I say thank you, but it's not enough. And people need to see examples of things you can do in your community to do more than simply saying thank you to somebody.
Yeah, and you guys have tapped that vein. Hohenwald, I looked it up, and this is from 2010 census data, as a population back then, it's probably, I presume, growing a little bit, but you're looking at 3,700 people and some change. So this is a rural, by all means, right? This is a rural community.
We're up to 12,000.
Oh, wow. So you've 12,000 in 10 years. You tripled, quadrupled. Wow. Yeah. That's okay. Excellent. Tripled, I guess. But yeah, well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And so, well, that means it's a growing concern. And that's really good. I think more people need to, return to nature. I think there's so much healing in that space. When we talked about that at the beginning of the program. But so let me just ask you to tell us a little bit more about yourselves. Okay. So let's let ladies go first. I will say, let me serve a beach ball up to you so you can spike it here, Shelley. You're a healer. All right, I'm gonna let you tell the story because we really want to hear it. But you are a bona fide healer, and one of the things you said on camera when we had, do you remember the Honor Connect Heal video we did? It's on YouTube for those that haven't seen it. It won an international Telly Award, so it's a very high quality piece. Just go onto YouTube and search Honor Connect Heal WWIA, and it'll pop up. There's 2 versions. Watch the long version. Put it on, with Dolby surround sound and grab a refreshing beverage and listen. But during that, it's a 15-minute bit. It's a short film. But anyway, in there, you two are featured, and at some point in that video, it never leaves me. You talk about the table as a metaphor, to healing. It's so brilliant, and it's so true, and it's so wonderful. So talk to us, Shelley, a little bit about who you are, your professional life, and I call you a healer because I know you are, but just tell us about what you do in your healing ways. Is so powerful.
I appreciate that, John. So I'm going into my 47th year as a nurse. I practice in emergency nursing. I'm certified in emergency nursing, but I do a lot of teaching internationally in things like triage and emergency nursing, and have done a lot of publishing and authoring, and been thrilled to go to all these ERs across the country. I've been to several military hospitals also to do teaching, which has been such a privilege, along with going to some Native American reservations as well. So I've gotten to really experience lots of different cultures and different ways, that people serve their communities, but there's always the same, same theme, and you talked about it, it's chaos. So, working in the emergency room, we live in chaos every day, and it is that unknown element that draws wacko people like myself to do it.
I know it. God bless you, because you are a minority. I can tell you, I couldn't do it. There's no way I could do it. I mean, you deal in chaos and uncertainty and trauma on a daily basis.
And, for some of us, we're addicted to it, and that's why I'm still doing it almost 50 years into it.
Unbelievable.
But with that said, Dennis and I have been together for over 30 years. So I got introduced to the great outdoors not as a child. I mean, I was a baton twirler. So in high school, I did not know how to hook a line to fish or anything. I didn't know you could kill a deer. I had none of that. But, going through adult life and hooking up with Dennis, who I call Davy Crockett, I had to learn very quickly about the world of nature and all of that. But, I have to say that the experiences in emergency nursing have really prepped me for serving WWIA. I mean, where else can you have a stranger come in your house and drop drawer to show you their scars and their current wounds that they're still attending to? I mean, it really creates...
How about that?
How about that? But it really creates this other level, of trust, because people, we're the most trusted profession in America is nursing. And so I really do think that having that background has really helped establish very quick relationships and feelings of trust, especially when we've had heroes come with significant current medical issues, that need some attention. So it's come in pretty handy having somebody, there that is a nurse. And I will say the folks that I work with at Williamson Medical Center ER are where some of our volunteers come from. Our volunteer guides come from there, the people that send me their grocery cards to pay for groceries, or they do some of the baking and cooking. It's a whole community, really, of emergency people that help to pull these events off.
Wow.
So, Dennis, I'm going to let you fill in about yourself, Davy, a.k.a. Davy Crockett.
Davy Crockett, let's hear it.
I was blessed to grow up in a home where both my dad and mom were avid hunters and fishermen. And it was nothing. I remember when I was in grade school, walking home from school and meeting my mother coming down our street, which was a dead-end street, carrying 4 gray squirrels and a shotgun. Not very many people have a mom that does that, but she was very special. I grew up in the graphic art industry, and printing. and I grew up in Vermont. And I had owned my own printing company before we left Vermont and moved out here to Tennessee. And I picked up kind of where I left out, not owning, but back in the graphic arts industry again. And in '97, Shelley started her business. And I think it was 2002, I was a plant manager of a commercial printing company. And Shelley said to me one night, she says, "You got to retire. You got to come home. I need your help. I can't keep up with what's going on in the office." So I gave them a notice and retired from a 45-hour-a-week job and a paycheck to a 65-hour-a-week job and no paycheck.
Oh yeah. Oh, you guys have a great story. You really do. What a great team you make. It's we appreciate you sharing that with us. It's really great to find little tidbits that I didn't know about you. And one of them is the fact that you, Dennis, you're originally hail from Vermont. And we've got some very close friends of the foundation up in Bennington.
That's right.
And and they're moving to, guess where? Tennessee. That's right.
Really?
Yes, they have a house not far from you, and you, I can promise you that you and the Davenports are going to go back like car seats. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Because they're not far from you. Okay.
Well, you need to send me their contact information so I can connect with them.
I will definitely do that as soon as we get off the podcast, because they're absolutely amazing people. Mike and Debbie Davenport, they run our Vermont chapter, and they got a house up in the hills there in Vermont, outside of Bennington, and then they just bought a place not far from you in Tennessee, which I'm just making this connection now. And the beauty of the foundation is, there's just all these 1,000 points of light that are just connected, somehow, some way. And, so that's going to be good for everybody to get you guys together, because you're absolutely two of the most dynamic duos that I know. And you're going to be in close proximity to each other. It's like, two of these, they talk about these black holes out there that are, combined, and you get this super black hole. Well, that's, and all this energy coming out of it, it's going to be great.
You better strap in, John, then.
I am. I'm getting my safety restraint belt on now. So it's really great. What's happening. I want to, cause you guys do turkey hunts, you do archery, you do muzzle loading events. You're hunting deer and turkeys and with various different, methods. And, it's just got to be you're heavy in the spring and then you're heavy in the fall, right? I mean, these are the seasons that are on for you, up there at DoubleCreek, right? So there's probably, and there's I don't want to call it a farm, but you have horses too, right?
Yes.
So all this acreage, all these things happening, that's a paradise, if you ask me. I mean, it's just the critters are everywhere. What a wonderful thing that you're doing. You must be at peace with a lot of things in your space, and that's important, right?
Well, it is. And, I tell people, and Dennis and I say this to each other all the time, we're so blessed to be there. When we went to look at that property, because at that time I was flying several times a month to go out and teach. It's a 2-hour drive each way to Nashville Airport. Yep. And, when we bought that property, we really had to make the decision, is that worth sacrificing all that time on the road? And we said, absolutely. And we've never once regretted making the decision to move to that property. Mm-hmm. But we say we're blessed all the time, and we sit out and look over that back porch, and I just pinch myself. We've been there, 22 years?
21 years.
21 years. I still can't believe we own that. And I go to bed at night and look up all the logs inside the house, and I think how lucky I am to be in a log home in the woods with a neighbor 4 miles away. I mean, for some people that might be terrifying. For us, it's the most peaceful and grateful thing that we could ever have. And we've been able to share that. to me the most important thing. It's one thing to have something you're grateful for, but to be able to share it, that takes things to a whole nother level. That is what makes life worth living.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, and that's what they call the good stuff. If you can share something that's very meaningful and impactful in your life, and share it with others, all kinds of goodness is bound to happen, and certainly is happening in the space that you've created. And each, I've always allowed, the hosts, wonderful people like you, to kind of do your own thing. I mean, that's your thing up there. And so you are always, I see on Facebook as you guys are getting ready for your events, I know all these beautiful things you're cooking and the meals you're preparing. And I just, it does have a really, the best word I can come up with is a home or homey effect, this idea of coming home. And every time I watch your stuff or see your stuff and what you're doing, I feel the same thing. I feel like there's a sense of home there. And the log cabin is warm, it's made of wood, and there's this stream coming through, and there's a mile, this anticipation of going up the mountain a mile to get to this place. It's really, really magical. And you guys selected a great place. So I'm going to ask you, okay. And this time we'll start with Dennis. I mean, I know you shared the one story, Shelley, about the individual that founded a little quiet place there. But Dennis, if you had to put your finger on other than the story you shared with us earlier, if you had just to put your finger on one event or one instance within event, one snapshot in time where it for you became like an aha moment, like this service that I'm doing is helping me, or really resonated with you, something that, when you look back on all the 24 events, is there something, one space, one point in time that really resonates, with you?
There was one time that I'll have to bring Shelley in on this because she can finish it better than I can. There was a gentleman who had in the Vietnam, and an older gentleman, and I happened to be short one guide, and I went out with him and spent the day in a ladder stand and just listening to the various stories that he told about his life and stuff. It was just moving, but there was and he was our first Vietnam soldier to come to the events. But we had an issue when he first came, and Shelley took care of it. And it meant a great deal to me what she did in making it work. Shelley, if you'll tell John what took place.
Oh, I think I know what he's referring to. And as Dennis said, we have not had very many Vietnam veterans. We've had a few. This was the first. The rest of the group was much younger, by more than 30 years of age. There was a big difference in the age. So once everybody arrived on Friday to get ready for meeting up and the dinner, I noticed that the gentleman that was the Vietnam veteran hero was not talking with any of the other guys. They were just total disconnect. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, oh my gosh, he had no cell phone service when he was in the military. There was like no computer, portable internet. The weapons were different. Everything was different about his world. And I needed to find a way of something to bring everybody together to make it a successful event. So I talked to the associate about it. I can't remember who I think it was John King. No, it might have been, I can't remember who it was. And I took him aside and we talked back and forth. And what we did is we brought the other gentlemen together and we talked about how things were different in the Vietnam War versus Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, and all those other events that were warfare. And their eyes just were like deer in the headlights. They said, we had no idea. So after that discussion, everybody sat down and had dinner, and then everybody connected, and they all left hugging each other. I mean, it was a goosebump moment to see that happen. But that was very memorable.
It was.
It really was.
Bringing generations of warfighters together, spanning the gap of, I don't know what, 3-4 generations. I don't know how you count them. But, I have what's interesting about that, I'll tell you, that certainly resonates with me, because I have the luxury of having served, when I joined in 80 in the early 80s, it was, it was about, I guess I first raised my right hand in 83. So Saigon falls in 75. So it's like 8 years, okay, between the time that Saigon fell and the Vietnam War is over in earnest and I joined the military. But I can tell you, as you probably remember, I had read a ton of books on Vietnam. There was a bunch of movies about Vietnam. The Deer Hunter, comes to mind, that really gave, even though, it's Hollywood, doing its thing. But still, and I remember Vietnam being on the TV as I grew up. There was 3 channels back then, NBC, ABC, and CBS. That's it. And the TVs had, little antennas that you had to move around, sports fans, in order to get a signal. And I remember as a child, so I was born in 64. So, by the time I'm old enough to watch TV and see what's, happening, at the age of reason, say 7, 1971, Vietnam's on like Donkey Kong, and it's in the living room, not some of the time, but all the time. Yeah, Vietnam's on TV every night. Okay, so it's very much and I'm in Chicago, and the neighborhood, believe it or not, that I lived in is pretty much void at the time of all young men between the ages of 19 and say 30. They're gone. They're drafted. They're in Vietnam. And so my mom's having, I can't believe I'm telling this story. I'm off track here, but hey, so I back then in our neighborhood in the suburbs of Chicago, the ladies are having bridge parties. They're eating, coffee cake and drinking coffee and they're talking about, many of them are talking about, their sons, their nephews, their neighbors that are off at this war, and then every night you're watching it on TV. And so, that's sort of it's prevalent in my mind. And then I joined the military, and years later, and all of my bosses at the battalion, brigade and division levels, 3 levels above me, all of those bosses, my officers and senior enlisted, are all Vietnam veterans. So I'm being led. I'm learning from them for my whole career. It's that way. And then of course my generation gets involved in this towards the end of my career in 911 and all OEF Operation New Dawn, et cetera, all the stuff that you mentioned that's going on today in the global war on terror. That is the war of that couple of generations, but there's a gap. That's the point. There's a gap, a massive gap in technology, a massive gap in culture, and a lot's changed in that 30 or 40 years between Vietnam and going into Iraq, Afghanistan. And so to be able to bring that together, to knit that, and to find a touch point and some connective tissue, if you will, that you did that day is just brilliant. You know, I mean, you've got to find common ground, right? That's what you're there to do, you know, and you did that. And just by, you know, I'm sure because it was, you know, it was just what occurred to you to do, you know, to bring somebody who's, you know, not in the middle of, who hasn't formed, you know, and you haven't found normality in the group yet. You know, that's why you're a healer, you know, and it's just wonderful. I mean, I salute you. I honor you. I thank you for all that you've done. And on behalf of the heroes that are out there, that you've served and will serve in the future, you know, would like to give you a big salute, you know, and you know, and a digital hug here.
We appreciate that, John.
Absolutely. So I'm just gonna turn it over to you guys, and I give you the opportunity to you know, to have the last, you know, say the last whack at the piñata here. Is there anything you wanna share with us that you know that we haven't touched on?
Well, we thought we were talking about you know, stories to share that had a little humor, and we have one that I still tear up. I mean, it's one of these, I hope you don't wet your underpants on, okay? So one of the heroes, this was the last event, right? The last event from last year, his flight was delayed multiple times. So the decision was made that Dennis would bring back to DoubleCreek the heroes that have already arrived. And I connected with one of the nurses from the emergency room. His name is Reggie, who's born and bred Tennessee. So his accent is very thick. He is everything Tennessee is. I love this man to death. He would do anything for us. The challenge was the hero flying in was actually from another country who worked on an agreement between his country and the United States where he was serving in counterintelligence. So he served with the United States Army and maintained dual citizenships. His accent was extremely thick from his Middle Eastern country. So now I have Redneck Reggie heading to the Nashville airport. You can't make this up.
No, you can't. You can't make it up.
To pick up this hero. And we had to tell the hero over his cell phone, okay, don't be scared now. This guy's name is Reggie. You won't understand him. So, okay, Reggie gets there. They find each other. Finally, they're in the truck together. There is a massive traffic jam downtown Nashville. Reggie cannot get off the exit. So we have him on speakerphone with the hero in the background trying to get Reggie to understand he needs to get something to eat because it's been so long. He flew from the West Coast. So anyway, and with all the delays, he just needed something to eat. So Reggie's trying to circle the wagons to find a grocery store or a gas station to get something to eat. They can barely understand each other. They finally arrived close to 3 hours? 3 hours later, they finally get there. And the two of them were fine together. They had figured out a way to communicate, but they could not understand regular words between one another. It was the funniest thing. Everybody was just laughing so hard. It was absolutely hysterical. It was so funny.
Well, I love that story, you know, and still yet despite the fact that we've got some language barrier here and dialect barrier, you name it, you know, they still find a way. These two, you know, Purple Heart recipients find a way to connect and complete the mission. And isn't that great? You know, I mean, that our service branch, this, you know, here's another thing here that's, you know, important to, you know, highlight based on that wonderful story, is that really our service members across the country and throughout our nation's history, here's the newsflash, are really come from and hail from, you know, extremely different backgrounds. You know, the diversity among our service members mirrors that of our society. It is a microcosm of our society.
Absolutely.
And that's right. And we are all immigrants, okay, with the exception of the Native Americans, okay? We all come, if you go back far enough from different places to come to this great place called America. And, our service branches, all of them, are really a microcosm of our society writ large, which is a big melting pot. And, one of the things, I don't want to say, getting wounded in combat is a random thing. In some cases, it might be. In all cases, there by the grace of God go I and go they. So it's an interesting sample set. Now, the Purple Heart community, which is, they say what 7%, roughly 7% of all Americans ever join the service, and raise their right hand and actually wear a uniform. It's a small percentage. And even a smaller percentage than that get wounded. So it's like less than 1%. So if you look at this Purple Heart, community that we're serving, it's really a subset of a subset of a subset, right? It's a really interesting group. And some of it, hey, it was just wrong place, wrong time. They all just say, hey, I just wasn't fast enough that day. Or whatever the case might be, whatever the circumstances were that, got them wounded. But most of them are your, what I would refer to as your common, soldier, Marine, airman, Navy man, so they're just all so wonderful. I absolutely just love the fact that when you get them on an event, and you start seeing where they come from and what's gone on in their lives and, where they hail from, in their experience in the military, it really is a part of the fabric of America. And it's just great that people like you have, really opened up your homes, engaged your communities, and all in the name of helping heal, the invisible wounds of war, and doing that through the power of the great outdoors, doing that through, your extended community and your, opening your home and all the things that go on to pull off one of these events. So, I hope you go to bed tonight and spend a little bit of time in reflection and pat yourself on the back.
I appreciate it. John, a lot of people ask us, both Dennis and I, what's it like, to do what you do? What's it like to be around Purple Heart recipients, or what's it like to like have them stay in your house overnight? And we both tell them the same thing. All I can tell you is one word: it's humbling, because it really brings you to your knees when you hear the stories and you see the persistence and the resilience that these heroes have. From the amputees that have come, people who've lost certain function, have lost their family because of the stress of their, trying to recover from wounds. All these things make you feel very humble to have them, in your presence. Yeah. And we feel blessed by that after every single event. And that's what we tell people, get involved and know what it's like to feel humbled by those who did something greater than you and I will ever have done in our lives.
I love that. So true. I'm so humbled by it. I am. I always, and if I ever lose that, if I ever lose that feeling, I'm done. Okay, I'm going to get out. Right. I'm going to turn the reins over to somebody else. I promise you. Okay, right. But I feel that. I feel that every day. I got goosebumps right now. Okay, I'm about the most. I do. I'm the most. I feel like I'm. I just feel I'm super patriotic. And I love the fact, that there are these great Americans out there who sacrifice so much, and it is humbling. It's super humbling. To me, I still run. Camp Hackett. It's the nation's. It's the foundation's longest standing mission set. 17 years. Of hosting combat wounded, and I did a 20-year run, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fine. But I still feel humbled when they're under my roof. Still to this day. And I swear to God, if I ever lose that feeling, I'm done. And I hope that I never do, because I feel like a servant. I want to serve them. I'm making their breakfast. I'm making their dinner. My team is throwing themselves headlong into making sure that this is a memorable, positive experience from the time they get off the plane or rock up in their car to the time they go home. That's the mission. That's the focus. Provide a world-class outdoor sporting activity to honor, connect, and heal. And I was saying earlier about the attractor. The chaos theory. In chaos theory, not to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm going to bring it back full circle. There's always an attractor. There's right. Something, right? And so the attractor in this case, in this model, is the hunting or fishing event. And everything that centers around that bright, shiny object is really the good stuff. But to get them there, you say, hey, man, we're going to go do this great thing, in the outdoors and have a ton of fun. And they're like, yeah, well, I never turkey hunted in Tennessee. I'd love to do that. I live in California. This idea of going to, Hohenfeld or Hohenwald, Tennessee, and hunting turkey is very appealing to me. That's the attractor. But it just getting them there and having that opportunity to do all these other things that happen in that space. The connective tissue that we've talked about, the layers that we've talked about. That's the healing. Sure. And it doesn't happen without people like you. It really doesn't.
We're grateful and blessed to be able to do it. And, we couldn't do it without the other, one or the other, and all the people that volunteer. Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, the best group. And we're, garnering new people to help out, to take some of the pressure off some of the ones that have been doing it for 10 years now, that have new family members and things like that. Yeah. But there's no way we could pull any of this off successfully without all the help of our community. And the Hohenwald community is extremely supportive of the events. I mean, we get front page newspaper.
Yes, you do.
I mean,
I got all of them.
Yeah, it really is. And I think in a way, WWIA can be looked at as the new measuring stick for what is being patriotic, because it can no longer be just saying thank you to somebody you see in a uniform.
Yeah.
We have a whole new moral compass in this country. So we need a whole new measuring stick for what does it mean to really be patriotic, so that people in small communities or big communities understand what it is they really need to do that's more. And I think WWIA is a great example of that, and be part of what that measuring stick looks like.
Oh, that's just really well said. I appreciate that, and I'll footnote that. I when I use it, because I think it's I think you're onto something. And that's really great. It really is. And it's a testament to how many people have rolled up their sleeves and thrown in on this thing and said, I want to make a difference. And so, it's a very humbling thing, on top of being, still being a host myself personally, to see this thing, grabbed up, to other people to get their clutches in it and define it, and refine it in ways that work for them and ultimately work for those that we serve, is also a very humbling experience. I have to be honest with you. I mean, it genuinely is. And I thank my lucky stars every day that I'm part of something that's, much greater than the sum of its parts are greater than the whole, as they say. And it's so true. And the other thing that's so nice about a network, we've spent so much energy in this country, going after, understanding, and essentially attacking, corrosive and dangerous networks, right? Bad guys. And that's why we started creating these spider webs, and to understand what does this network look like. And, when I was studying spider webs and attacking spider webs, in one point in my career, I, really started to think about spider webs. And I was like, wow, spider webs are, if you look at them, they're really interesting. The silk that they use, how strong it is, how resilient it is, what it does, where it comes from, all these things, right? And, but those are bad networks. Guess what? We got a spider web, but it's a good network.
Good one.
Absolutely. And when you have a good or a great network that's a great spider web, it has all those qualities, but it also, when it's all doing good things, you end up with an amazing entity. And any one of those touch points, intersections of that web, you find people like you. And it's just great, and I commend you, and I wish you the best of luck on your upcoming events. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, John.
You guys did a great interview. I can't wait to have this one posted out there. I know everybody's going to love it. Thanks for what you guys do, and God bless you.
Thank you, John. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye now.
To learn more about the mission of the Wounded Warriors in Action Foundation and how you can get involved, please visit our website at WWIAF.org or follow our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thank you for listening to the WWIA Podcast and for helping us honor, connect, and heal our combat wounded Purple Heart heroes through the power of the great outdoors.
If you like what you're listening to here and would like to join our team in our mission to bring healing power and recovery to America's Purple Heart heroes, please become part of our Sponsor a Hero team by clicking on the link in the podcast notes or by going to WWIAF.org/sponsor. That's WWIAF.org/sponsor. Our heroes need you now more than ever. Thank you.